Hello dear students, welcome to our third lecture in poetry analysis entitled Acoustic Dimension. First let's start with prosody. What prosody is the study of speech rhythms and versification, as we tend to use rhythm in our natural speech, and versification is related to the study of verses in poetry. Most poetry makes use of rhythmic elements that are natural to language: alternation of stress and non-stress, syllables in our questions, exclamations that we use daily, vowel length as we vary using the short vowels and the long vowels, consonant clusters like clo, dro, bro, etc., pauses, and so on. Pauses mean that there is punctuation as we tend to stop when we speak for short or long time. Various rhythmical patterns have different effects on readers. Yet there are no general rules about their functions. Today we're going to deal with metrical patterns, but how to analyze metrical patterns' effect on the readers is not so easy because there are no general rules about their function, which need to be determined for each text and context individually. It's when you deal with a poem that you're going to try by your own to identify the effect of this rhythmical pattern on you first as a reader. Prosodic features today, as I said, and this is the first part of the third lecture, we concentrate on meter. On next lecture we will deal with rhythm. Meter. What is meter? It's a measured arrangement of accents and syllables in poetry. Poetry employs the stresses that occur naturally in language utterance to construct some regular patterns. The alternation of stress and non-stressed syllables will build that pattern called meter. Metrical patterns in poetry are four basic ones. Starting with accentual meter, it's when each line or verse of poem has the same number of stresses, but varies in the total number of syllables. You find in the same line in a poem at different numbers of syllables, but when you count the number of stresses per line, you find it the same. Syllabic meter, as opposed to accentual meter, each line has the same number of syllables, but the number of stresses now varies. Accentual syllabic meter, and this is our main concern, each line has the same number of stresses and non-stressed syllables in a fixed order. And that's what most English poets tend to use. In a same line, in every line in a poem, they tend to employ the same number of stresses and the same number of syllables in a certain fixed order. Free verse, the last type of meter, it's where there is an irregular pattern of stress and syllables employed. The visual representation of the distribution of stress and non-stress in verse will be marked in this lecture with 1 to mark a stressed syllable and 0 to mark a non-stressed syllable. In other sites you may find other symbols employed. Accentual syllabic meter. This is the widely used type of meter in English poetry. That's why we concentrate on it today. Both the number of stresses and the number of syllables between the stresses are regular. Each single unit, composed of stress and non-stress, is called foot. It's with foot that we are going to measure the meter. Most common types of metrical food measurements are: we find the first type mostly used, a yum. In a yum food, we start with an unstressed syllable and a stressed syllable. It sounds like the dum, the dum. Observe, in this short poem, or part of a poem, triplet, a man put on his hat. A man put on his hat and walked along the strand, and there he met another man. Here you have an iamb used. We decompose first the line into syllables. You have a man put on his hat. We've got 6 syllables. You identify the food starting with an unstressed syllable, so you've got iamb repeated 3 times. Another type of meter is the trochee. As opposed to iamb, it starts with a stressed syllable and ends with an unstressed syllable. It sounds like dum, duh, dum, sorry, dum, dum, Observe. Hark the hour of 10 is sounding. Hark the hour of 10 is sounding. Hearts with anxious fears are bounding. Hall of justice, crowds surrounding, breathing hope and fears. By stress we mean the emphasis we put on the syllable that we pronounce. There are rules, but generally this relies on daily practice. Trochee, as I said, the first syllable is stressed, the second is not stressed. In this verse, we identify the meter as trochaic. You say the meter here is trochaic. The same food, trochee, repeated 4 times because we have 4 stresses or 4 accents. The next type is dactyl, where the first syllable is stressed. The 2 coming syllables are non-stressed. It sounds like da da da, dum da da, dum da da. Observe. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. The fruit is identified as so. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 syllables. The fruit is dactyl, to repeat it twice. The third type is anapast. Anapast, as opposed to dactyl, is when you have 2 first syllables as rest and the last is rest. It sounds like dum, dum. We put the emphasis on the last syllable of the food. Observe. The Assyrian came down like the wall from the fort. The food resembles this 1, 2, 3, 4 times. This accent. There are 4 accents, we say. The sponde, rarely used in English, is when both syllables are stressed in the food. This occurs rarely in language. It's rarely we use continually stressed syllables. Bark, 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 bark. Bark, 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 bark. As in T.S. Eliot's Book of Practical Cats. In accentual syllabic verse, lines are named according to the number of accents they contain. We usually ask you to identify the metrical pattern. To identify the metrical pattern, you need to identify first the number of syllables, then you come to the accents, and according to the number of accents, you're going to name the meter. Greek numbers are usually used. When you have 1 accent in the food, you call it monometer. When you have two accents, it's dimeter. When you have three accents, it's trimeter. When you have four accents, it's tetrameter. Five accents, pentameter. Six accents, hexameter. Seven accents, heptameter. Eight accents, octameter. To name the meter of a poem, as I said, one usually combines the terms given the stress pattern. You are going to identify the type of food by counting the number of syllables and sounds and stressed syllables. And then you count the number of stresses per line. Example, a line of poetry, a verse, that is written in iambic meter. Iambic means that the first is unstressed and the second is stressed. The foot is identified as so, and has four accents or four stresses, is called iambic tetrameter. Observe. Her weep but worth enough and time. This quiet lady with no crime, who could sit down and think which way to walk and pass a long life's day. Here you've got four accents. Another example. Observe. A line written in dactyl, where the first syllable is stressed and the second is not, and with two accents, containing two accents, is named dactylic dimeter. We say that the metrical pattern in this poem is dactylic dimeter, especially when it's repeated in each line. Observe. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and candid. You've got the dactyl foot used, where the first syllable is stressed, followed by two unstressed syllables, and you've got two accents. The last type of meter is free verse. In free verse, we don't have any particular regular pattern of stress or number of syllables per line. They vary from a line to another. It's a type of verse that has been widely used only since the 20th century. Read. Some quick to wine, some for adventure, some from fear of weakness, some from fear of censure, some for love of slaughter, in imagination some learn later, some in fear, learn in love of slaughter. Extracted from Ezra Pound, Huxley and Lumley. Well, to end with this lecture, I invite you to enjoy reading again the daffodils and try to identify the metrical pattern followed in this poem. Take your time reading it. You can stop the video to read. Identify the metrical pattern. I should remind you, you have to count the number of syllables first, and then you identify the food type used to name your metrical pattern used in this poem. Thank you for your attention. You can refer to the following titles for more information. Thanks.